welcome back to the Rugby Pod. I'm Andy Ryan, Big Jim and Goodey are with me as usual. We'll be looking back at all the blockbuster action from the Autumn Nation series this weekend, especially Ireland's win over the All Blacks. Plus, we'll be joined by former Ireland back rower and British and Irish Lion Stephen Ferris. So settle back, enjoy, and make sure you're subscribed on Spotify. How's your week been, lads?
Long.
How's it, James?
You know, you've been following me on Instagram. You post your good life out there. I'm buzzing. I'm buzzing.
You sound it. You sound like you're buzzing. What I will say before you go into the depths of your weekend, Jim, what I will say is a few weeks back, I gave you some banter around some horrific clobber that you've been wearing. And you've taken my advice. You've digested it. You've opened your cloth. You've dissected it, digested it, and you've gone. And apart from your trousers were a little bit too short, so they've had an argument with your ankles. You looked $1 million, mate. You looked unbelievable. And I say that humbly, as you know, your sidekick here. I would have. I definitely would have. With you in that outfit, you're looking beautiful, James.
Would you maybe leave my scarf on though?
Yeah, no. The scarf looked good.
On my boots.
The scarf and the little pocket handkerchief, just nice little accessory touches, mate. You look lovely. I mean, look at us.
Yeah, I know. Look at you. Look at you. Look at me. Anyway, on to me. That was more. I took a risk there. It was risque. My tailor, big shout out Andrew Brooks. He's been pushing me to go scarf, to go handkerchief, neckerchief, clotherchief in the pocket. I've never done it. I've had them trousers on the back burner for a while. Yes, they're a little bit short, but arguably you could say that short is in. I don't really know. And I just went full noise. No shirt. I went roll neck. No shirt. I went roll neck, aka turtleneck, and I felt very Italian. I felt very regal. I didn't feel overly comfortable, but
itchy. Was it itchy?
Yeah, it was. Why are smart clothes itchy?
Cheap. The cheap ones are always itchy, mate.
Mate, I'll tell you now, that is expensive clobber, humbly. But yeah, it didn't feel comfortable, but it felt right, if that's what I mean. So long weekend in Italy, doing the big one, Italy versus Argentina. Had a day around Venice, posted all the good pictures on social media. Not a fan of Venice.
You're not? Smells a bit smelly?
Just a bit busy. Yeah, just not a fan. And I'm a cultured man, well-travelled. Just not a fan of it. And then getting back was a night. Look, I'll be honest, travel's been a nightmare this weekend. That's probably why I'm a little bit flat. Flight was delayed 3 hours, was on Ryanair. Not that I'm looking for first-class Emirates.
Who flies Ryanair, mate? Honestly, who flies Ryanair?
Well, you've got to get there. It's A to B, isn't it? That's it. There's nothing else. But my goodness me, there's budget, and then there's like you'd probably be more comfortable dangling off one of the wings in a G-string, I reckon.
I was going to say, how's the back in those bucket seats? I mean,
ridiculously uncomfortable. So, but I got brought back down to earth as well. Today being Monday when we recorded, I was at the prison, not as in like in prison myself because I've been arrested for abuse all the stuff on the Ryanair flight. No, just giving back, just going to the prison, give a bit of a talk, you know, tell them how rugby saved my life. And I think it was more for me than them, to be honest, just to give me a grounding, give me a bit of perspective on life. But yeah.
Well, you were lecturing the prisoners.
Well, I'm not lecturing, I'm more sharing, I'd say.
Sharing, yeah. The life that could have been for you, Jim, if it wasn't for Mrs. Good.
That is the whole thing, Andrew. The life that could have been, and I spoke about it with the guys. And it's one of them. I went to the prison, right, and there's an array of people in there, an array of characters. Speaking frankly, all the way from sex offenders down to petty crime. So if we're using them as the kind of worst of the worst, or the people that are in there serving the most severe of crimes for their punishments, or the other way around. But very different. So I'm on Prime Video at the weekend, loving life in Venice, just having coffee, post on Instagram, and then I'm brought down to earth. Big shout out to the prison, Barlini, who opened up the gates and thankfully opened up the gates for me to walk out of as well. Andrew, imagine me and you in a cell. I mean, the beds, the toilet, everything's so small.
Hey, if you commit the crime, you've got to do the time, and prisons ain't great. So I can't ever imagine, and I don't want to ever imagine going into a prison as a convicted criminal. I've seen them on TV where you got to sit on the pan in front of your mate. I can't ever imagine, Jim, watching you after some of the photos you send me when you finish the toilet. I got no interest in ever seeing you sat on the pan. So there's a reason to behave myself in real life.
After this weekend in Italy, mate, I would have filled up a black bin bag. Is all I'm saying. Towel the carbs down. Croissant, pasta, coffee. I mean, my goodness, mate.
Heaven.
Yeah, and I had about 12 beers with Guzzy as well on Saturday night, responsibly, and a burger and a kebab. Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty long few days. Let's be honest.
Nice.
Goodey, how'd you get on over the weekend, mate?
Yeah, mate, I was busy, to be honest. And I learned a very interesting lesson at the weekend, which is you've always got to be careful what you say. You don't know who's in the crowd. You don't know what you're up to. You can abuse people. You can say silly things. Luckily, it wasn't me, but I had a really interesting Saturday. Thursday, I was up in... Sorry, yeah, I had a really interesting Saturday. Thursday, I did a dinner up in Manchester, which was pretty good. And then Saturday, I was in and around Twickenham for most of the day. So I started off, did a bit of GB News Saturday morning, drove into GB News.
I like GB News. Ooh.
Did an interview there, and then I headed off to St Margaret's, the St Margaret's Tavern, just down the road from Twickenham. And I was doing something for Guinness, so hosting a Q&A myself and Stephen Larkham, who I must say is an absolute legend of a bloke, although he completely buried me when we got on stage. I've been burying him, introducing him, 102 caps, England's best player in the 2003 World Cup final. Just give him a bit of banter. No, good banter. Like he was fine with it. And then I said, I remember playing against you and blah, blah, blah. And he just looked at me and goes, mate, I never remember playing against you in all my life. I said, mate, I've still got your shirt at home. And he's like, mate, genuinely. So he obviously buried me back. It was good fun, actually, with Guinness. And then we fast forward, we're talking about the game, talking about England, Australia. I end up chatting about Marcus Smith and how great he is. And obviously there was the chat about Quade Cooper not being there. But literally, I'm talking at Marcus Smith like you wouldn't believe. And there's a lesson to everyone. You never know who's going to be in the crowd. So I asked Stevie Larkham, I said, Stevie, talk to me about Marcus Smith. What do the Australians really think of him? Because we over here think he's unbelievable. He's got a massive future. And not only is he the future, but he's the now as well. And it's just a really exciting selection for us to see him in there. And he goes, yeah, he's pretty good. He's a bit short though, isn't he? He's not a midget, but he's a bit short and all this stuff. He's going to struggle at the contact area and people are going to smash him. And I don't know how much he's going to stand up to it physically.
Live.
I promise you,
Stevie. His name to it.
Stevie Larkham has said this live. Anyway, didn't think anything of it. I said, mate, I've seen him tackling the Prem. He puts it in. Like he's not 6 foot tall, but you watch him tackle, he'll properly have a dig. He's not a 10 that just tries to get out the way or waits for other people to make his tackles. He'll stick his head in. Anyway, we carry on, and I've talked him up beyond belief. And as we're walking out of this Q&A at the end at the pub in St Margaret's, this bloke walks over to me. He's like, Andy, how you doing? Can I have a word? And he's with his wife, and his wife's got a white England tracksuit top on. And the bloke looks pretty smart. He's in a coat. Looks like he's going to some sort of corporate hospitality. He said, I need to speak to Stevie Larkham. I was like, yeah, of course you can. Stevie, come and speak to this guy, meet him, blah, blah, blah.
And they come over and say they listen to the rugby pod, do they?
Well, they do. Yeah, they do. But more importantly, he goes, Stevie, nice to meet you. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Marcus Smith's dad, and this is his mum. And you've called him, vertically challenged and a little bit like a midget. I was like, oh my God.
Word.
Wow.
So it just goes to show that whenever you're giving people a stick, you got to know who's in the crowd. And I ended up speaking to Marcus Smith's dad and his mum for a good 5 or 10 minutes. Lovely people. Like his mum was properly nervous as well. And his dad, I'm chatting to his dad. And I said, look, he's a lovely lad. I met him a couple of times when I was commentating, and he just seems like he's so positive about everything. I said, how is he? He goes, mate, I spoke to him this morning. He said he's going to rip Australia to shreds. Like the confidence is unbelievable. And then I said, mate, it'll be amazing. He said, he has got a question though. And Andy, I want to ask you this. I said, yeah, go on then. He said, he's desperate to do all the kicking. Obviously, Farrell's playing 12. It's Marcus Smith at 10. He wants to do all the goal kicks. He said he got to the team run on Friday and no one knew he was doing the goal kicking. And I said, he said, what do you reckon he should do? I said, just for this one game, as much as he wants to do it, Farrell will just own it. So don't even ask Farrell, just let Faz get on with it.
We'll have more of a chat about the rugby shortly. But before we do, We're back in London for a live show next week, Flatiron
Oh,
Square,
God.
24th of November. It's going to be full go. It's going to be a large one. Make sure you get your ticket. Go to eventbrite.co.uk and search the Rugby Pod if you fancy coming along. Well, let's talk about the rugby then. There's only one place to start, really, isn't there? Dublin.
Italy? Oh.
Yes, Andy Rowe. Let's talk about Dublin and Ireland's absolute dismantling of the All Blacks. I mean, Ireland were just ridiculous from minute one, from the get-go. Actually, from the haka, where the whole crowd was singing Fields of Athenry, the atmosphere was electric. It wasn't a fluke. It was a whole different kind of performance from Ireland in terms of attack, ball in hand, the shapes, the confidence that everyone had, the hard running lines. You know, sometimes people question Ireland around their physicality when they come up against bigger teams. That's all put to bed now. That was a phenomenal performance. Like James Lowe, ridiculous. You know, you go into the back row, Caelan, Mill, Doris, Jim, your favourite player, monumental. James Ryan smashing people for fun around the park. The work rate and the outside of scrums from Tyg Furlong and Andrew Porter, the old lead, unbelievable. Like that, it was a complete performance, wasn't it?
With that as well, looking at that performance, now it wasn't a fluke, no. And it's one of them where, and we saw it in the World Cup, and I'd be interested to hear what you think, Goodey, in terms of performance, because everyone's talking about it as one of the best performances, you know, ever, you know, in the professional game. Obviously, that one for England in the World Cup, and the stakes were slightly higher, you can potentially say. But they were just on, weren't they? And yeah. I've been unsure where Ireland are. I think a lot of people have, in terms of where they'd be this autumn, right? I didn't think they'd beat the All Blacks. I don't know what your match point predictor said, but I think it would have been the same as mine, that the All Blacks would have won. From an All Blacks perspective, really, you could see it coming a little bit. And I say that off the back of them beating the USA 104-0 and off the back of them putting nearly 50 points on Italy. But the performance against Italy was arguably the worst I've ever seen the All Blacks play. And then you hear everything, you know, Andy Rowe, you might have heard a little bit more of your superfan mates in New Zealand, that they're fatigued. You know, they've been away from home for months on end. And then you've met Ireland in a full stadium. I mean, the atmosphere looked unbelievable. And we said it last week, or I might have said it last week. If Ireland beat the All Blacks, which they did, the World Cup in 2 years' time, my goodness me, is going to be phenomenal. And I just air what you said, Goody, and what everyone's saying. One of the best performances I've seen. I mean, the physicality was unbelievable.
What did you guys make of James Lowe's comments after the games? I know you tweeted about it, Jim. Went viral.
Well, yeah. I mean, I tweeted about it on the Sunday in Venice, and I was slightly hung, I'll be honest. Not too bad, but a little bit dusty. And like I've always said, I'm not great at contextualising on Twitter. I'm better talking about it as we are now, probably talking a load of crap as well. Yeah, it went viral-ish, I'd say. You know, I had 66 comments, and the comments weren't great. So basically, I put a tweet out saying, for anyone who questions residency rules and/or project players, this is an example of why you shouldn't. So I'm kind of telling them they shouldn't, but it's almost like I'm just saying it. A snapshot of what it means. I imagine it must have been extremely difficult for James Lowe to be stood in front of the haka, having grown up doing it. And the replies, and as we know, look, I'm not taking a gauge on the replies of what's come through on Twitter, but it's thought-provoking. That's my opinion. We like James Lowe, friend of the show. Goody, we've done a few events with him in Dublin. Yeah, he's a Kiwi. As much as he tries to put on this Ireland, he tries to put on this Irish accent, which is hilarious. My point being is the interview off the back of that performance, for anyone that's questioning someone that is playing for Ireland or playing for whoever, whatever the country is, you can't question it after that performance. And that interview, the emotion that he showed, is the emotion around what modern day professional rugby and professional sport is. Whether we like it or not, the rules are there now that players, coaches, not just in rugby, in all sports, are now exploiting however the residency rules may look. There's a part of me that understands where people from Ireland will be like, well, what the hell's going on here? You know, CJ Stander took a little bit of shit as well. But I look at someone like James Lowe. I don't know whether they would have won the game if he weren't playing. That's how good and how influential he was.
Can I just ask what the issue around what he said was? Because I watched the game, I was gutted that we lost, that the All Blacks lost, but seeing James Lowe cheered me up a little bit. I thought he showed some pretty good passion. What's the actual issue around what you tweeted, and why are people upset? What's the other side of the argument?
I think the issue with it is that people have taken umbrage with is the fact that it was all about the All Blacks. It wasn't necessarily, the questions weren't really saying, how does it mean to you to play for Ireland? It was all about how good is it to beat the All Blacks? You were an ex-Maori, you've grown up there wanting to be an All Black. But yeah, I mean, just look at him in his performance. Look how much passion he's got in the Irish shirt. He scores a try, the turnover, everything. He's celebrating, he's in screaming with the crowd, and it was spilling out of him. So I think it was more a case of the line of questioning that it obviously means a hell of a lot to him. You can see how much it means to him to play for Ireland against the All Blacks.
Could you imagine stood right and having faced the hacker, and you sung the English anthem a few times, being a passionate Englishman, let's just say that. I'm trying to be polite here. Arrogant, bold, traditional Englishman. But
I ain't bold anymore, mate. I'm not bold anymore.
No. Throw 10 grand at it, mate. Anyone can not be bold. But with James Lowe, can you imagine what his knees must have been clattering when he stood there?
Mate, no one can. No, anyone that's abusing or saying anything negative against it, no one can imagine how he feels. And I give you a load of banter on here, Jim, about being English, but having to go and play for Scotland. You're fully fledged Scotsman, and it's similar but different, right? No one can imagine his feelings before the game, and it's like anything. When you're probably told you ain't good enough to play for one team, and then you get the opportunity to play against that team for your adopted country, who you've done nothing wrong by moving over here. He probably, when he came over here, did he come over and go, I want to play for Ireland? No, he came over, and then things transpired that he was a damn good player. They can qualify in residency, and there he was. I mean, it was the passion in him. It spilled out in a green shirt on the field. His performance was exemplary. Yeah, I loved his interview afterwards where he said, "You bollocks." Did you see that one when he's on Channel 4? He's like, "You bollocks." Yeah, always question my defence or something like that. I was like, yes, boy. So it was passion spilling over in him, and he's put in an unbelievable performance. And it's right that pundits will question certain things. I remember the England-Ireland game. I think people are pointing the finger at one of Johnny May's tries where he'd just been through about 5 or 6 runs himself, James Lowe, and then he didn't sort of corner back, and Johnny May's got to try, and he got a bit of stick for it. You're going to get people questioning things when you make mistakes, when you're a pundit and when you're a player. Now, he's answered everything in that performance. There shouldn't be one negative around James Lowe, because judge him as a rugby player in an Ireland shirt, he couldn't have done any more at the weekend to justify. He doesn't have to justify it. He's everything. He gave everything for that jersey, and that's all that counts.
He's not justifying it. I'm trying to justify it. I don't think he's even bothered.
He ain't bothered.
I've been caught up in this storm. Smart though, hey? I've put myself in the storm of James Lowe beating the All Blacks. You see what I've done there?
Yeah, I mean, you've bought Instagram followers. Now you're trying to actually engage with people on Twitter and get more people to follow you. Wise man, James.
Well, let's get an Irish view on the game in Dublin now then, and we can have a chat with friend of the show and a very happy former Ireland international, Stephen Ferris. How are you, mate?
I'm absolutely fantastic. It's great to speak to you too, Andy. I'm sure you're devastated after such an ass kicking at the weekend, but the boys were amazing, weren't they? Like, they really were. They were superb. But honestly, lads, like, I played in the opening game against South Africa in the Aviva Stadium, been involved, working in loads of games down at the Aviva. I've never felt an atmosphere like it. And it's really weird because last week against Japan, we're struggling to sell tickets. And then this weekend against Argentina, there's still tickets available. But when the All Blacks come to town, it is the biggest show in town. And everybody was there. The atmosphere was just electric. And from the first minute, it just felt like there was something in the air that the boys were going to play really well. And they blew the Kiwis off the park. And it was brilliant to be there and be a part of it.
Stevie, why was the energy like that before the game? Is it solely because the All Blacks were in town? Is this the biggest game from a perspective of an Irish player or Irish fans? Why was it so different?
I think it's different because there comes the expectation now, Jim. Like, I think getting that monkey off our back in Chicago, then obviously we beat them in 2018, that when they rolled into town, it was like, we can do this. Where over the last 20 years, it's been like, hopefully we can score a few tries and we'll just go and watch the All Blacks and see how good they are. Where now it's like, let's see how good the Irish boys are. And I think that Japan result as well give everybody a lot more confidence getting into the game. And expectation, and what comes with expectation comes pressure. Like, and the boys, the boys were just immense. Picking man of the match, like I didn't pick man of the match, but I was asked a few times who would you select, and I couldn't really put my finger on anybody because they were all so good. Just the atmosphere spilling out into the pubs, 3:15 kickoff, few jars on board, getting a try early on with James Lowe. Just it was awesome.
Mate, just looking at the game again and watching back, and obviously I was at Twickenham watching it on the big screens there. Now, when the hacker's going on, you hear the Fields of Athenry coming out. That was like spine tingling. So for those Irish boys, it's now making me feel a bit goosebumpy now and quite nice. But it was unbelievable. There's obviously a mark of respect, but also that was a real sort of instigator for the team as well, do you reckon? And then you see the boys smiling and really buzzing for the hacker. The atmosphere must have been off the charts.
The thing that I liked about it was, like, so New Zealand came, there's obviously different types of haka that they do, and they went back to the original haka.
Paul Pango.
Yeah, that's the one, Andy. And like, it takes quite a long time to do it and to do it right. But initially, all the fans quietened right down. There was pure silence. And then it felt like the Kiwis sort of milked it a little bit. Like they were taking so long overdoing it that the Irish fans then just felt like going, hold on a second, guys, we're getting a little bit pissed off. And they sort of started singing songs, and there was ole, ole, ole. It sort of started first, and then Fields of Athenry, Goodey, as you lads know, like I can sing out at the top of my lungs on the live shows. Everybody just gets stuck into it, and they sort of drowned out the haka. And the Irish boys, when they were lined up, they took one step forward, started the haka, and then that was it. And they just eyeballed the opposition. And again, it was just a brilliant moment before the game kicked off to kind of stamp their authority on the match to say that this is going to be, one of those games for the ages. And I think it really was.
Mate, are you basically claiming that you started the Fields of Athenry in the Aviva Stadium? That's what I'm telling people. Say it on here now. Claim it. You started it, and it was the start of an amazing victory for Ireland.
Yeah, it was me and Eddie O'Sullivan liking it.
I hadn't ever seen a game like that. The intensity from minute 1 to minute 80 from probably any team, like both sides of the ball. You can get teams that are massively pumped for D and flying off the line, but across the board, Porter, ridiculous. Like Ty Furlong, ridiculous. The how they're grafting and how they're firing into everything with that intensity. And then you look at the attack, it's a whole different attacking sort of setup that I've seen from Ireland. It was a complete performance.
I'll tell you, well, this is my own opinion on it. These Irish boys are fresh. They are ready to go. Like, boys have played 70, 80 minutes of rugby since the Lions tour. Yeah. Like, and then they get a good hit out against Japan. Everything's feeling good. Like, that's the 14th test match that New Zealand have played since the 3rd of July, is it? 15th of July, something like that?
Yeah.
Like, Ireland have played 3, 2 against Japan, 1 against USA. Like, so the Kiwis are bound to be knackered physically, mentally. But your first point, Goody, about winning the collisions, doesn't matter who you play. You have to win the collisions, win the contact area on both sides of the ball in hand defence. And Ireland did that from the off. And even guys like James Ryan was running around obliterating rucks, like destroying people at rucks. And nobody talked about James Ryan the whole game. But he was doing his job, and all the boys were doing their own jobs, and the team just functioned really, really well.
And then, Stevie, lastly, from me, is around the James Lowe narrative. We've obviously gone back and forth while I was in Venice and getting opened up on social media. And I was interested to get your take on it solely because the amount of people that would read the room. And for the listeners that don't know what I'm talking about, it's around James Lowe, who had a phenomenal game, did an interview after, and the narrative around his comments were all to do about him not playing for the All Blacks and what it was like to then face the All Blacks and the emotion that he had around the haka. Stevie, just for the listeners, because it is quite a poignant point as a proud Irishman who came through the system, and I put that tweet out there, and there's, it did go a little bit viral, but people are opening me up. But as an Irishman, like, how do you feel when you see James Lowe's interview after about him being a Kiwi, not making it as an All Black, coming to Ireland, and it's all about, James Lowe not making it for the All Blacks, but putting in that kind of performance?
Yeah, like, there's a lot of varying opinions on the subject of players coming over, whether it's for Ireland, Scotland, or whoever it may be. Some international sides have more than others. And yeah, just on James Lowe, Jim, like, James Lowe, born in New Zealand, Nelson, New Zealand, played for the Maori All Blacks 2014, 2016, played all his rugby for the Chiefs. His boyhood dream was to play for the All Blacks, and that didn't happen. And just before he left to come over when he signed for Leinster, I think that dream had sort of disappeared. And when he came over here, was it in his head that he was going to play for Ireland? I don't think it was when he initially signed to play for Leinster. I don't think it was. And then the more it was talked about, he didn't break any rules. It was the residency rule that we all know about and have talked about so much. And I hate when people actually get on the players' back. Like, it's CJ Stander as well for Ireland over the years. Everybody gets stuck into him. He speaks with a South African accent. James Lowe, Jim Gibson Park, Bundy Aki, these fellas. It's not their fault. Like, it definitely isn't. That they're went with all the rules. Of course, the ideal scenario, and I know I sent you this in text, Jim, is that when you represent Ireland and you're standing there with me or whoever, that you're standing alongside 22 other guys that are born and bred from Ireland. And that's what the RFU are trying to get to. Leo Cullen at Leinster is trying to get an academy full of Leinster guys that are going to come through and make it into the Ireland squad. And it's the same with Ulster, Connacht and Munster. That's the end goal. But it's professional sport, professional rugby. I don't think it's ever going to be like that. Look at England, Vunipola brothers, Manu Tuilagi. Look at Scotland, Duhan van der Merwe,
all of them.
Yeah.
Jim Hamilton. Hey, the stories around Jim here. Jim wasn't good enough to play for England, so we had to go and play for Scotland. Same story, right?
Yeah,
very similar players.
Just to finish on this point, do I think Ireland would have won on Saturday without James Lowe, Jameson Gibson Park, and Bundy Aki? And my honest answer is probably no.
Yeah.
So we got to aspire to fill in those very small spaces with Irish-born players.
All right, Stevie, thank you very much for coming on the show, mate, and best of luck for Ireland against the Pumas this weekend.
Cheers, Andy. Cheers, lads.
Cheers, Stevie.
Cheers, Stevie.
Thanks for coming on, pal, again.
No bother, lads.
Well, we all saw it on social media over the weekend. Springboks captain Siya Kolisi making time for fans after their win over Scotland. Well, Jack Denton was one of those fans who actually ended up jumping the fence in his budgie smugglers and getting his ass signed, for want of a better phrase. How are you, Jack?
Not bad, mate. Still in cloud nine.
Jack, I bet you are in cloud nine. Let's just get this straight first, because for people who don't recognise the broad Scottish accent and the surname, you are the brother of one of my former teammates, Triple D's, Dave Denton. Is that right? So who were you supporting at the weekend then? Let's put it out there first.
I am indeed brother of David. I'm going to be honest with you. I may get a kick from David later, but since he's retired, I've switched back my allegiance back to South Africa. Not going to be chuffed.
Oh, nice. And let's have a chat about it then. Obviously, you've stripped down. It's in Scotland. It's absolutely Baltic. Jim says Dave is hung like an absolute squirrel. What were you thinking? Because to get it all out and then poke your ass at Siya Kolisi, was there a plan there, or was it just off the cuff?
Well, first of all, at the call, I just made sure there was no high resolution cameras around. I could capture that. But genuinely, man, I bumped into him on Friday night just walking around the street, and I just let him know, listen, man, I'm going to be out there. I should be pretty easy to spot. Not very tan since I've been living here for a while, and the rig's not great. So if you could just keep an eye out for me, that would be fantastic. I just really would like you to sign my budgie. And credit to the guys, they came around. I upped everyone up to sort of help me scream towards him. And as he came around, everyone screamed and he pointed me out and he started heading my direction. Then I just had the awkward sort of sidestep with the guys who guard the pitch. Just kind of, can I go on? Is it fine? Just before I get tackled, but worked out well for me.
We were chatting though, Jack, as well today. What's the plan? Because them budgie smugglers are going to be worth some, aren't they? Not just because they've been on you and they saw probably a lot of love in the lead and the amount of alcohol that was consumed, but obviously the great Sean Gleeson signed them. Big shout out to budgie smuggler as well. What is the plan? Are you going to frame them? What are you going to do with them? eBay them?
So, well, definitely won't sell them for my own purpose, that's for sure. My first job was to try and not let the signature rub off on the night out afterwards. So I managed that successfully. But yeah, I'm either going to keep them or I'm very happy to, if it's worth any sort of money, if it goes towards a charity, I'm very chuffed with that. Hopefully that can make some sort of difference. Definitely I'd rather keep it than sell it for myself, to be honest.
Mate, just whatever you do, when it goes in the frame or when it gets handed over for a charity to auction off, just make sure there's no pubes in the front and the dribble's gone as well. But keep Sir Khaleesi's signature on the arse.
Yeah, I take a couple of wet wipes that wee brown stain in it.
All right, Jack, thank you very much for coming on the show, mate. Enjoy those Instagram followers skyrocketing through the roof, mate. And best of luck with the budgies.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot for having me on. It's been great.
Thanks, Jack. Class, mate.
Let's chat about England's win over the Wallabies now then. Goodey, another win over the Wallabies, but how do you rate their performance?
Easy.
Yeah, 8 from 8. And let's be honest, I think the Wallabies will be pretty frustrated with themselves. England are, like Eddie says, we've got some new players coming in a bit of a transition in terms of trying to actually change the way we play. And this weekend will be the litmus test for us in terms of where that's at, because you've got to play a different way to beat South Africa. And, Marcus Smith at 10, I thought he played pretty well. I still think you just got to let him lead everything at 10. So I still feel, and it'll be interesting this weekend because the news is that Owen Farrell's definitely out, and so he'll have full control. But it still felt like there was this leadership play, and I said it on the pod last week around let Marcus Smith run the attack, let him be the fulcrum, let him be the entertainer, the guy that drives everything, and that will get the best out of him because that's how he's been so successful at Quins. Whereas if Farrell was trying to control things, and you saw Farrell stepping up at first receiver a lot.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, Goody. Was I right in picking up that a lot of the time Marcus Smith was second receiver, and it was probably him who actually managed to get the width on the plays? Is that me? Or was that a few times?
No, it did happen a few times. And the way a lot of it plays now is it often does go, you see some of the plays that end up going out the back, you go a 9-12, and then you've got a short line, the 10's out the back, and then you've got a couple of layers of attack outside that. Jim, you're just looking head down, pushing them all, mate. But there are some times when that's interchangeable, and you want the better ball player, which is Marcus Smith, being that second guy. But it just seems sometimes that where Marcus Smith wants to go and dominate, and as he does for Quins, it just felt like it was not quite as fluid as it could be. And it's going to happen because you've got a new combination playing together. He's never played with Ben Youngs, apart from against Tonga last week. He's never played with Owen Farrell at 12. I can't wait for us this weekend to see, you're bound to see Slade and Tuolangi back in the centres with Marcus Smith at 10, and you'll probably go Malins on one wing or Radwan on one wing, Johnny May on the other. I'm probably going to say Malins will start on the wing because the aerial threat's coming. But look at the ball he put Freddie Stewart through for the first try. I mean, my God, what a finish that was from Freddie Stewart as well.
What sort of tactics do you think they're going to change for this weekend?
I know it's a throwaway comment, isn't it? If you watch how South Africa beat Scotland, who are one of the best teams in the world, just tighten up, big fella.
Scotland. What do you mean tighten up? If England tighten up and try and play the way South Africa play, we'll get hosed.
You laugh about England having to tighten up. Scotland at the weekend, I think, showed, we can get onto the Scotland game, where the only space in the South African defensive line, the only space is in the outside channel.
Exactly.
However you get there, through hook, through Cook, or through a bin bag being kicked off Finn Russell's boot, you need to get into that space. So, and I don't know. I've not seen any. We saw a bit of the lines. We saw a bit of Scotland doing it. I suppose, having looked at the weekend, the only team that could do it is Ireland, off the back of seeing how they played at the weekend. I just don't know. For me, Marcus Smith this weekend, it's not sink or swim, but if he can unlock South Africa, that is him. He's in. He is in there. If he can get that ball, and part of doing that, Andrew, and again, I'm stealing your thunder because this is your knowledge inside out. You've got to have the bollocks to do it, haven't you? You've got to have the bollocks to throw that ball, take it to the line, and there's a chance could be intercepting the life out of that ball because you've got to go for it. And we saw Finn do it with a couple of kicks, and people are booing and almost laughing a little bit at some of them. But that's my 2 pence worth on how England will try. I don't think they will try to beat South Africa. Yeah,
you've got to take the risk at times, as we saw. The Lions didn't take any risks until that third test, but also they're controlled risks. So, Mapimpi's coming. Dressy Creel will pop up on the other wing. The bottom line is England have got to prevent South Africa from getting driving lineouts, scrums. I think we're going to struggle at scrum time, and that's unless Marler can miraculously come out of isolation for 10 days on Friday, the day before the test, and be sprightly and ready to go. He probably will. He'll probably pick Marler and starting with Sinclair. But then, we didn't dominate at scrum time at the weekend, did we? And James Slipper was playing out of position at tight head. So you just think of the fundamentals of the South African game are line-out drive, scrums, kicking game. You need probably Malins on the wing to defuse the bombs alongside Freddie Ayre-Stewart. Johnny May the chicken running from all over the shop. But you need to do it in a controlled way, but finding those edges with phase plays with 2 lines of attack, they can be unpicked. Let's not forget Australia did them twice. So it's definitely a big thing around risk reward. It's definitely Marcus Smith has got the spuds to do it. Let me tell you, if there's anyone that's on the par with someone that can unlock a defence like that, there's 2 probably in the world that can do it, and that's Finn Russell and Marcus Smith at the minute. And I don't mean that lightly, because they're guys that have got that daring in them. You've got to have the confidence to look for it, find it, and then the ability to execute.
Well, unfortunately for Scotland, Finn Russell wasn't quite able to unlock South Africa as much as he would have liked. Jim, what do you make of their performance?
Well, it had nothing to do with Finn, and I didn't watch the game live because I was doing Italy-Argentina. So I watched it back, having known the result and looked on social media to see what the consensus was. And there was a lot of talk about Finn Russell not playing well, which wasn't the case. Like, he missed a few kicks at goal, as did the South Africans as well. I don't know whether it was windy in Scotland. Probably was.
Yeah, too many 5 guys.
Exactly. So he's probably, I was going to say shitting himself, but it probably was after the amount that he had. Scrum, line-out drive. That was it. Yeah. Scrum. That was it. I mean, we can put the line-out in there and say line-out drive. It was more line-out aerially as opposed to the drive. Scrum got hosed. Now, you can have the best game plan in the world. You can have the best fly half in the world to unlock South Africa. If you get smashed at the scrum and you get smashed at the breakdown, you can't win a line out. You may as well go home. Like, South Africa didn't play that well. Yanchis, both 9 and 10, didn't play very well. Hurston, especially at 9, I thought was shocking. I'll say it there.
Etzebeth played well.
Etzebeth played very well. Absolute monster.
Tell the arms on him.
I mean, ridiculous. He got pinged as well for a turnover, and he was all over it. Etzebeth was the best player on the pitch. He was, and he's a mate. And he's a mate of mine now. We're mates.
Man of the match, though, wasn't he? Man of the match.
He was man of the match, and fully deserved as well. I think, again, just going back to Scotland, again, I tweeted it. It was a dogfight that we didn't win, and South Africa are full of mongrels. And we struggle as a team. We beat Australia the week before. We looked very comfortable, and South Africa made a shit fight of it, and we couldn't clean up the shit.
How does Scotland need to go against Japan to make this autumn a success, or is
just fucking win it? Just win it. Just remember the World Cup. That's all I'm thinking.
Win it, but also, again, a week's a long time in sport. You look at the game against Australia, absolutely loving life. This week, a real disappointment. There's an expectation now in Scotland you know, we would have won that game at the weekend against South Africa. I think we would have been 4th in the world or 5th in the world. Like that's unreal. It shows you how quickly it can change. Why are you laughing, Andrew?
If spots and maybes. If I didn't eat as much, I'd be about 13 stone.
Exactly. I don't think that, maybe 23. But I think Japan, they've got to win. Japan's a bogey team for Scotland, as we know.
Speaking of bogey teams, Fiji, almost a bogey team for Wales over the weekend, weren't they?
Robbed.
What do you guys make of that?
Robbed, eh?
I wouldn't say robbed. Positively, how good did they look, though? Let's be honest. When their coach, Burncott, a good friend of the show, Fiji. How good did they look? Burncott, friend of the show, not even there. The coaches aren't even there. They've got a makeshift scratch team in terms of coaching team as well.
Yeah.
I tell you now, I don't know how, but they could be the best team in the world. I don't know how. But just if someone can get a hold of it. I know, I can't work it out.
It goes back to the same old question around World Rugby and the likes of Fiji. Where's the competition? Where's the growth? Where can they place them so that they can get regular sort of top level rugby?
Well, they've only played 5 games since the World Cup.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And listen, I know we're in COVID times and all that stuff, and a lot of their boys are earning decent coin, outside of Fiji and the Pacific Islands. I know there's the Super Rugby team that's coming in now as well, which is great, but there needs to be investment. And it goes back to, there's a bit of corruption, wasn't there, from the Fiji Rugby Union years ago, a few years back, and questions around how and who was in charge there and where all the cash was going. So undoubtedly, they produce unbelievable rugby players, like with X factor, left, right and centre. And they always seem to, raise their game and perform exceptionally well against Wales. But again, it was the fundamentals, wasn't it? Wales, the driving line out went well. Ellis Jenkins was, unbelievable. What about Lewis rees-zammit's wheels for that try?
What about his celebration? He did the lightning bolt.
Yeah.
How cool! I was cringing because you nearly got beat by Fiji in the most respectful way in terms of how you've played. Because Fiji had 40 men, 30 men for most of it. And he's done the lightning bolt. And I thought, actually, mate, you've got 250,000 followers on Instagram. You could probably get away with that. It looks actually quite sick. I think I was just jealous is what I'm trying to say.
Well, let's have a look ahead to this weekend then and get your match point predictions in front of the final round of the Autumn Nations Series. Don't forget, just download the free Match Point app and join the country's biggest private league with the code RugbyPod. It's your last chance to win yourself some free pints. Do you guys know how you're getting on so far?
Go on, hit me. What we got? Hit me. Must be ahead of Jim now, surely.
Good. You're ahead by 15, mainly thanks to Jim picking Scotland to beat South Africa.
Why that?
I mean, what are you thinking there, Jim?
Let's start with the big one, Italy-Uruguay.
A massive game, that one, eh? Who's commentating on that? Who'd commentate on Italy-Uruguay?
Me, mate. I'm the Italian correspondent for Prime Video. So
yes, you are, James. I like
so
it.
I will start.
I did get asked to do that one with you as well, Jim.
You did. So why are you not doing it with me? It's in Parma.
I'm working at Twickenham again for England South Africa. Faf de Klerk this weekend. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Well, Faf de Klerk, Jim Hamilton. I know who I'll take. I do like Faf. So I'd say I'm going to go Italy because they desperately need to win. They are now 16 games lost on the spin. I'm not selling it, am I? And it's Uruguay. I've just made the World Cup, which is obviously great for them. Italy by 20.
Okay.
That's a ballsy call.
Yeah. Italy by 12, I was going to say. So, there we go.
Scotland, Japan.
I'll take this one. Konnichiwa, everyone in Japan. I know we've got millions of listeners over there. I'm going to go Japan by 5.
I want to make sure that you put that on your match point predictor then.
Oh, right now, before the teams are out, if Matsushima's not playing, maybe I'll change my mind, but Japan by 5. 6, how many did I say? 6. Japan by 6.
I'm going to go Scotland by 12.
Ireland, Argentina.
Ireland by 18.
Ireland by 18, yeah. I thought you said it was going to be a bit closer than people think. I'm going to go Ireland by 12 again.
France, New Zealand.
Can you wait?
Yeah, that's going to be a hell of a game, isn't it?
It's going to be a hell of a game because New Zealand just had the pants pulled down. That's why.
Yeah. I think Aaron Smith will come back in at 9. Yeah, the All Blacks are on their last legs. I think the All Blacks had too many Guinnesses in the Guinness factory. in the build-up to that game because you saw a picture out there. I'm going to go New Zealand by 6.
Ooh.
I'm going to go France.
Go on, James.
Imagine the All Blacks losing 2 on the spin. Yeah,
And then
let's
they'll
imagine
lose all
it.
3 to, let's imagine it. Then they'll lose all 3 to Ireland in the summer as well.
Neither way.
I doubt that. But I'm going to go France, who looks sensational on paper. France by 6.
Wales, Australia.
Oh, I'm going to go Australia.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know off the back of what, though. I know it's something deep-rooted in me. My Welsh listeners, my fans, my people, I'm sorry. Powley, I'm sorry. Biggs, I'm sorry. Alan Wynne, I'm sorry. The Sheriff, I'm sorry. Wales, I can't go against my Wales. I'm going to go Wales by 4.
Oh, interesting. Wales by 4. See, if you went Australia, I was going to go Wales, but because you've been so positive about Wales, it means you've probably not telling the truth. I'm going to go Australia by 2.
England, South Africa.
I'm really sorry to every England fan on here. I desperately want England to win. I think we're going to struggle at scrum time a little bit. Underhill was massive. Curry was big. Courtney, we could smash them. I'm trying to convince myself. Manu back in the centres. England by 3. I was going to say South Africa, but I've got to say it. I can't bring myself to say it. England by 3.
I think England will win. I'm going to go England by 6.
You guys have got a couple of shout outs to finish off with, don't you?
Yeah, I've got a nice one. I've got a shout out to Jack Kelly and Alice O'Shea, who've got different surnames at the minute, but not for long because they're getting married this weekend.
Yeah.
Jack's a huge fan of the Rugby Pod, and he's also used the discount code to purchase the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0 to trim the bush for the weekend. So I did reach out to your mate who got in contact with me to do the readout and said that probably 4 or 5 days before, because the ingrown hair started coming at about 2, you want that to subside, pluck them out, and my goodness me, you're good to go. So congratulations, Jack and Alice. Here's to a good 5 years or so together.
Hey, and fair play to Alice as well. She's obviously getting married to him, knowing he's got a full bush. So it must be real love. So, Jack, you should have probably trimmed it up before now, but there we go. Fair play. And for me, a massive shout out to the Hereford Rugby Club boys. I was speaking at their dinner on Saturday evening. They love the pod. They cannot wait to get Jim Hamilton. And I promised Jim you'd go there next year with your top off, your pants down, and the bush out everywhere as well. So shout out to the Hereford Rugby boys.
Thanks, Goodey. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, producer Tristan. And thank you very much for listening. And don't forget to check us out on YouTube and make sure you've subscribed on Spotify as well.
Rugby Spot.
Spotted pod.